Our talk today will be presented by Mary Histing, who just so happens to be an enthusiastic member of our New Earth Visioning Project planning team. And she will be speaking today about New Earth healing techniques. And she is very well qualified to do this. She's a licensed board certified massage therapist and craniosacral therapy practitioner since 2010. She's had a wide variety of experiences and careers that have led her to discover and experience herself as a compassionate healer. Her own healing journey occurred simultaneously while training in the healing arts. Doesn't that happen a lot? Her spiritual quest has spanned her whole life and led her through religious paths to discover the powerful presence of the divine within her. She owns a healing practice in Herndon, Virginia, where she offers craniosacral therapy, massage, energy work, and sacred mentorship programs. She's also a great speaker, and she speaks on a wide range of topics such as getting to know and access your higher self, following your intuition, conscious relationships and sacred sexuality, the power of choosing your thoughts, and my favorite one, the most important relationship you'll ever have, and that's with yourself. To learn more about Mary, you can visit her website, maryhisting.com. So, knowing Mary, this should be fun. So let's turn this over to our own Mary Histing.
First of all, thank you. It is such an honor to be able to share just a little bit of my experience with the group. I feel like very passionate about the new earth, and I feel like that's what's happening in my office, and I'm so excited to be able to share this with you. We're starting to usher in the new earth in all of my clients and the experiences we share together. So buckle up, this will be a fun ride. So this topic that I've chosen to talk about is new earth healing techniques. And I'm very aware that this could easily be a 4-hour or 4-day workshop. It's a gigantic topic. So as a disclaimer, I'll just say that we're going to paint the topic with some broad strokes and just touch on which I think are the most important steps to healing, new earth healing techniques. And again, sharing lots of client stories. So what I'm going to share with you today comes from my 11 years experience of working with clients, and also, as Janice said, very much from my own experience and my own healing journey. I've learned so much. These things go hand in hand. You know, the healer, the person who's called the healer, they're on their own healing journey, and then the people who come to them for healing, in that dynamic, in that relationship, healing takes place on both sides, and it's an honor for sure. And so what I'm going to share is just my perspective. There may be some concepts I present that are very elementary and basic to some of you, and some things I may present may be considered way out there to some of you. So I want to remind you that you all have you're empowered to, you know, keep what serves you and let the rest go. Just hang on to what resonates, and we'll have a juicy discussion at the end. So that's my little intro. So let's take a look at what I've got on the next slide. Okay. So this slide, I put this slide together to depict how I see this issue about healing. Right now, I should say, I identify 2 major paradigms of healing that exist. And just again, from my experience, my own personal experience, and also my clients, there's a disempowered paradigm of healing and an empowered paradigm of healing. And I'm going to kind of compare each one. And I created this specific slide because I've been noticing that sometimes clients come in my office, and they come in kind of, you can tell that they're a little bit immersed in this paradigm. And again, this was me so many years ago, actually probably like 5 years ago, not really that long ago. This paradigm entails really folks, again, this was me, who are just living in a kind of a confusion and fear around what their body's doing, not knowing that it's even possible to check in and ask questions of their own body or research what their body might be doing. And so the first sign of illness or some kind of a symptom, there's a tendency to just get really, kind of confused, uncertain, afraid, upset, and kind of flailing for answers. Oh no, not feeling right. I have to go to a medical professional who can tell me what's going on because I can't figure it out. I'll never know. My body will never be able to tell me. It's that sort of a paradigm. And this is very exaggerated, I should say. But this really was me, so I can just take ownership of this. And then the medical professional, doing what they do, they're very professional. They run the tests and then they tell you this is a protocol to follow. And many years ago, I was doing this. I was very afraid to ask questions when the doctor or the medical professional would tell me, you have X, Y, or Z. This is what is coming up. I would say, yes, blindly, and not ask questions. So basically the prevailing attitude here, or the emotions associated with this paradigm, are fear and disempowerment, very much like what it says. Stories about this. I have, again, I'll tell my story first because I just want to own up to this. It's a little bit embarrassing, but it's true. This is how I learned. Many years ago, even after I started learning about holistic and alternative medicine, when a symptom would show up in my example is I had like a skin rash issue, and I was very upset by it. And I thought, if I work in the health and wellness field, I should not have symptoms. And so I went to practitioners, you name it, I went to them, acupuncturists, dermatologists, homeopaths, etc. And I was trying every protocol that they suggested, and I never stopped to really check in with my body and ask my body what it wanted or needed. I didn't think that was possible. So at one point I had actually 2 homeopaths that I was working with, and they gave me different sets of remedies to work with. And I didn't tell each one that I was working with another homeopath. And it was just one big mess of confusion. So that was me. So, but I do sometimes have clients who walk in and the first question they ask me is, how long will it take me to feel better? Or sometimes they ask me, do you really think this is going to work? So my work with them has been to gently, well, first of all, start to listen to them and find out, okay, where are they coming from? And then the next step is to gently consider, walking with them on a path to discover a new paradigm. So let's look at the next slide at a new paradigm. So this is a representation of empowered healing. Again, very exaggerated, broad strokes, but just to get the idea. In this paradigm, the person, and in this case, I'll use myself again, is able to tune into our body's wisdom. Instead of, when at the first sign of a symptom or knowing something's a little bit off, tune in. And then start to listen to what our body might be saying, excuse me. And there's nudges, very, very subtle, very gentle nudges that our body can give us, but learning to feel those nudges, understand them, ask more questions, and then being able to really kind of come to an understanding that the first things that our body sometimes needs are things like water, rest, nature, movement. And sometimes the body might say like, hey, I do need, somebody's insights on nutrition or something along those lines, that you might, research somebody who's not in your, has some skills beyond what you can figure out on your own. So in this paradigm, the prevailing emotion is not fear. It's more trust, and it includes an attentive, non-judgmental listening to our body. I'll tell you a story about a client. So I have a current client of mine. I'll call her Susie just for a fun story. She came to see me a year after she'd had surgery to fuse some of her cervical vertebrae. She'd had some numbness and pain for a long period of time, and the doctor recommended surgery. When she came to see me, it had been a year since her surgery, and she was not feeling really much better, wasn't able to do anything. She's a mother of 3 children and not able to fold laundry, cook, drive, make dinner, very impaired still. And so she had been to different physical therapists and the chiropractors who sent her to me. And again, I hold no judgment of her because this was me for so many years. Her first question was, you guessed it, how long until I feel better? And so I gently said to her, what if we looked at it a different way? What if we started taking it step by step and trying to loosen our expectations of timing and start looking at, you know, smaller increments of what are the goals, you know, feeling a little bit better. And so slowly we talked about this empowerment model. She told me one day that she was starting to feel better, and she said her chiropractor had said to her, you know, this is the kind of frequency I want to see you. And she thought to herself, actually, I don't know if I agree with that. But she didn't tell the chiropractor. But when the next time she came to see me, she mentioned it. And I said, okay, so here's the thing. You can actually talk to the chiropractor. So I kind of coached her through that and encouraged her to set up a one-on-one meeting that was, you know, at least 20 minutes long so they could really sit down and discuss all her concerns. And it turns out that she did do that. And the next time I saw her, she said she felt so much better. She'd been able to ask her questions, have her concerns addressed, and she felt much more empowered in her treatment plan. So that's just a little story about that, about the empowered paradigm of healing. Okay, and again, this very broad brushstrokes. Hopefully we can talk more about this when we have our discussion. Let's look at our next slide. So how do we shift this paradigm within us? And again, this may or may not be you. There may be vestiges of this hanging on, or maybe this is, you know, you're light years ahead of this paradigm, and that's okay if you are. This is just, you know, simply what I've been experiencing with my clients and the journey that I've made myself. So it's really all about healing through presence and self-compassion. So let's look at this. So it all starts with forming a connection with our body. Another word you could use would be embodiment. It's this idea that a lot of us, okay, again, I'll use myself as the example here, have been conditioned just pretty much since we stepped foot on the planet to live in our heads and to really don't listen to our body, ignore our body. A lot of the way, you know, school is structured, the institution of, you know, sit down, go to school. If you need a bathroom break, ignore it until the bell rings, or that sort of a thing. We've been pretty much trained to not listen to our body, but to really logic our way through things. And there's been a lot more emphasis put on thinking, logic, that sort of thing, but not really connecting to the body. I have a story that I remember about just being a little kid and growing up in my family. And when I was a little kid, I had a lot of tummy aches. And one day I was staying home from school because I had a tummy ache. And my older brother said to me, "You're a faker." And he said that enough that I think I started to internalize it to the point where I didn't trust my body. I said, I think my tummy hurts, but maybe it doesn't. I'll just ignore it and move on. So that's just one tiny example of how so many of us have been conditioned, and there's a million other examples. Another way that this has been kind of taught to us in our life experience here on Earth may have been through religion as well. That's another one that we are definitely encouraged to, you know, ignore the body and, you know, live in the spiritual world. And sometimes even in the spiritual, you know, in the current kind of spirituality that's, well, actually maybe not the current spirituality, but perhaps in the last 20 years, this idea about denying the body and living just in the spiritual world. And what's interesting is along the way, I've learned that disconnecting with the body is actually kind of a natural response to trauma. If you think about times when we've had trauma in our lives, you know, a fall or something, something has happened that was like very impressive. A lot of times we do is we just leave the body and we're somewhere else. And it's years later that we come back to starting to reconnect those aspects of ourselves. This has definitely been my experience. Another way to talk about this would be mindfulness, starting to get more mindful about this body that we live in. I neglected to read this as a really nice example of what presence is, full body presence, by Suzanne Scurlock, who is a local craniosacral therapist in the area, very famous in the craniosacral world. She says full body presence is the ability to feel all parts of your body with a good flow of healthy energy moving through you. Energetic awareness, the ability to recognize and interpret sensory information and subtle cues in your body and environment. So this is taking presence is much more than just kind of being mentally tapped in, but really being physically tapped in and feeling the flow of energy. Okay, so I've boiled this down into some steps that we can consider, steps to really forging that good connection with our body and starting to have that embodiment where we're feeling our body and living in it. So step one, which I think is the best step of all, letting go of fear. Fear, suspicion, and mistrust we may have of our body. So just fleshing this out a little bit, the more I live in this world, the more I start to see that there's a lot of belief systems that we've picked up over the years, each one of us. And I should say me, I'll use myself as an example here again. A lot of belief systems. And sometimes I ask myself, what do I believe about this? And where did that come from? So if you were on the planet in the last year and a half, you might have noticed that our culture seems to be preoccupied with fear of illness, just a little bit. So that's a very big and deep belief system that a lot of us have been exposed to living on planet Earth. Another one would be suspicion or mistrust of certain parts of our body. Specifically, this is usually about reproductive or sexual organs. And again, you know, that's definitely been there in our, here in the US at least, our puritanical kind of beginnings that we've inherited, unfortunately. Definitely, you know, mistrusting the body and especially the reproductive parts, denying all that. And of course, then it gets twisted, and we've seen that in the way it's been used to sell everything. Sex has been used to sell everything. It's the biggest taboo now. Another one would be fear and loathing of the aging process. So that one is definitely prevalent in our culture. You don't have to look very far to see ads for every kind of lotion, potion, cream, and whatever to, kind of hide the signs of aging. And connected to this would be a primal fear of dying. And the topic of death has been, traditionally has been taboo in our culture. The truth of, what death really is, it's seen as something so tragic, but rarely is it unpacked for all the nuances that it can be a beautiful transition to the next existence. So important to note here that when we are living in a state of fear, our sympathetic nervous system, which is the fight or flight nervous system, it's very heightened and activated. And that our body can only heal when we are in the opposite state, the parasympathetic state, the rest and digest state. So when we release fear, suspicion, and mistrust of our body, then we are able to listen to it and experience the sensations without judgment. So this is very important, the without judgment piece. This is kind of what got me thinking about this idea about the belief systems, was the judgment piece. A lot of times when I start to notice there's fear or mistrust within me about my body, I ask myself, am I judging it? And more often than not, the answer is yes. And then I ask, okay, where is that coming from? And then I go into which belief system is in play here. So that's where these steps came from. Okay, let's see, what's another step? So learning to listen to our body and trust it as we would a trusted friend. Now this, I think, is very key, and again, a journey that I've made myself. It's kind of comes with over the years when I started to really become clued into the thoughts that were running through my head. I started to notice that a lot of them were really not that nice. I had some negative thoughts running, kind of on a loop in my head. And I realized that that translated to my body too. I wasn't trusting my body. I actually loathed my body in some ways. So starting to turn that around and clue into maybe more positive loops running through and learning to trust my body, very important. So your body gives you signals that you're already familiar with to indicate that it's hungry, tired, or thirsty, etc., etc. What if it could be trusted to tell us if we're well or if something's out of balance? And this skill is actually very possible if we just begin to practice the art of listening to the body. And I should say that it's taken me years to feel like I can listen to my body now. So it's not a quick skill that can be attained. Then again, that's a limiting belief. I'll just put that out there. Actually, maybe it could be quick for you. It's taken me years, but it's worth the journey. So these indicators that we feel, the messages that we receive from our body, can be indicators that the body might be deficient in nutrients, or perhaps we're being clued into the impacts of unhealthy foods in our diet, or our body might be indicating that it's overwhelmed by toxins in or around our environment. And that would include emotional toxicity or chemical toxicity, etc. A couple of little stories about these concepts. About when the body gives clues about what it might need. I was talking to a friend the other day, and she was saying that she felt like some soreness in her leg. And she said at first when she felt that, her thoughts were like, oh no, I'm getting old. And that she's like, wait a minute, that's a belief system. Okay, let me back up and think about this. And she thought, well, the last time I felt sore in my leg, I drank some water and it felt better. So she did. She drank some water and her body felt better. So it's just a reminder that our body may be giving us cues just with some soreness, that it might need something. It's pretty simple, actually. So kudos to her. She was able to bypass the fear that got kicked off there. Like, oh no, now what's happening? So I have a very interesting client story about this concept about the emotional toxicity. I work a lot with families with autistic children, and one particular client of mine, she had an autistic daughter who was exhibiting a lot of symptoms, OCD, combativeness, incontinence, all kinds of kind of difficult to live with symptoms. And she noticed that it seemed to be somehow calibrated to the emotional environment in the house. She and her husband at the time were kind of going through some difficulties in the marriage, and she noticed that when things were really tense emotionally in the house, her daughter's symptoms got a lot worse. And so fast forward 4 years now, the marriage has been dissolved, and the family's in a different situation, and the daughter is all the symptoms have been very, very calm, and she's come a long, long way. And so a lot of the symptoms have improved. So she's able to find out that, emotional toxicity has a lot to do with, how our body feels. I thought that was really interesting. So step 3 is to be on the same team with your body. Again, the mind-body connection. So this happens to it flows from trust, really. So it's important to remember that our bodies are incredibly intelligent biocomputers. They're designed to heal themselves, period. We can trust that. I discuss this with my clients very frequently. I always remind them, your body can heal itself. Your body can heal itself. And the body's been designed to self-regulate. It'll give us signs that it's experiencing stress, signals like pain, so that we can help it regulate itself. And once we join Team Body, we can commit to listening and helping the body regulate itself. and it becomes less of a scary thing. You know, there's a partnership that's being formed now. We can discover ways to help the body regulate itself, making sure it gets enough sleep, which is a major way that the body recalibrates itself. Each organ has a time during the night which it detoxifies and restores itself. It's important to know that. And if our body's not getting enough rest, trying to find ways to help the body get more rest. And it could also be that your body might require something it's not getting from your current diet, something that you could research or perhaps enlist the help of a practitioner who specializes in nutrition to help with that. A story I can share about that is a few months ago, I was actually wondering the same question. I felt like my body was giving me cues that it might need a supplement it wasn't getting, something nutritionally it wasn't getting. And so I started just kind of asking it, like, what, can you tell me, what is it that I need? Just, help me figure this one out. And one night I went to bed and I had a dream. In my dream, I saw a bottle of the mineral that I needed. And then when I woke up in the morning, I was like, wow, thanks, body. So it may sound impossible, but your body can do that. It really can, once you've got that partnership going. And having this partnership, it just takes the fear out of the equation, and we can listen better when we're not in fear. So just a little gem I've learned on my little journey here. So step 4, care for your body with unwavering love and compassion. This is so important. Self-care is so important, but loving and caring for your body. We can nurture our relationship with our body as we would with any relationship. We can have daily conscious practices to incorporate into our self-care routine. And there's multitudes and multitudes and multitudes of self-care practices, but I'll just throw out a few that I've used or that we've used here in my house. Speaking to our body lovingly. And that goes to that negative loop that was running in my head all those years ago, the negative self-talk. So starting to change it to something that's loving. Loving self-talk is really important. And speaking to our body lovingly. I actually have a practice that every morning when I take my shower, as I wash each body part, I talk to it and I say, I love you. Thank you for carrying me through life. Thank you for supporting me. Thank you for working so hard to help me live my life. You're doing an incredible job. So I'm always, loving out loud, loving my body parts. Another self-care routine would be tapping or EFT. That's something that I'm sure a lot of us have heard of. It has to do with emotional freedom technique. So it's a mind-body practice. Gentle movement practices can be very, very good for this because they're very encouraging of self-awareness. So Qigong, Tai Chi, and they also are focusing on the breath and the body. So any practice that will keep us more focused on our breath and our body, fantastic for building this routine of self-compassion. Breath work, of course, pranayama, heart math. I'm sure many of us have heard of heart math. It's an institute that actually studies and researches the coherence of the brain and the heart and syncing the energies of those two together through breath work. Very, very helpful. Yoga, Pilates, all the wonderful things. And of course, I have to mention body work, being a body worker myself. These practices are just great. Massage, Reiki, craniosacral therapy, all of them bring us back into body self-awareness. And they are loving practices, to love our bodies with these practices. I've recently discovered a friend of mine who is a psychotherapist, and she is certified in a technique called havening, which is very interesting. It incorporates kind of like very soothing kind of motions that the practitioner or that the client learns for themselves as they're expressing their emotions. And it's just kind of a self-soothing technique. So I'm sure you all know a whole bunch more. I'd love to share them maybe in our discussion afterwards. Okay, next step. This is something that I've recently kind of started to learn about, earth grounding. Again, some of you I'm sure have heard about it. It's a very beneficial healing tool. And it's designed to receive the electromagnetic frequencies from the earth. And nerve impulses are electrical. The heart is regulated with electrical impulses. Like we're very electrical. So having direct contact by standing or walking barefoot directly on the earth actually regulates all the systems in our body. And just starting to learn about this myself. There's this gentleman named Clint Ober who started researching this himself. He wrote a book about it and he made a documentary about it. And it's all about grounding. Yeah, it's so great. And actually, just before we sat down for this meeting tonight, I went for a walk with my husband and we did this barefoot on the ground. So he says, earthing naturally protects the body's delicate bioelectrical circuitry against static electrical charges and interference. Most important, it facilitates the reception of free electrons and the stabilizing electrical signals and energy of the earth. Earthing remedies an electrical instability and electron deficiency you never knew you had. It refills and recharges your body with something you never knew you were missing or needed. And this, of course, explains why everybody loves to be at the beach. I mean, who doesn't love to be at the beach? We love to walk in the sand, in the water. It's because our body needs that. It really does. And also the reason why we love to be in nature. I mean, if you can't find me, I'm in the forest. That's all there is to it. I'm always out in nature whenever I can be because it feels so good. We need this. We really do. Time spent in nature is healing time. And the more direct contact we have with the ground, the better. So learning to live in awareness and alignment. So this is the next step, really. It's just putting it all together. Once we start to really listen to our body, let go of the belief systems, the fear, the mistrust, we start to love our body, show it compassion. We're present, we're feeling our body, we're connected with our body. The next thing is learning to actively listen to our body, trust it, honor what it needs. Then we are living in alignment with it. And let me tell you, living in alignment is the best feeling in the world. This is where I am right now and what I've learned. It's just so great. Like once you feel what alignment feels like, you never want to live any other way. Over time, if we're regularly using this tool of learning how alignment feels, we can discern which choices bring us into greater or less alignment. This tool can become like a steering wheel for our lives. And this is something that it's just delightful to behold. Talk about empowerment. It's this feeling of understanding, like, there's no more fear. You can trust your body. When it's in alignment, when it feels balanced, and it will never steer you wrong. It will never guide you incorrectly. And if we're connected to it, we can use this feeling of alignment to help us know, if this is a good situation to be in, if this is the best decision or if that is a better decision. It can really help us. One example I can give is something very simple when it comes to really learning to listen and communicate with my body. I let this alignment show me. To me, alignment feels like, it feels peaceful, it feels harmonious, and the opposite would be confused and tight and just a little bit like compressed. So alignment is much more like expansive. You feel like you can breathe better. So this is something that I use when it even comes to something as simple as, should I, engage in this next activity, or should I have steak for dinner versus a salad for dinner, or whatever. Just any example that comes up of a choice in my life, I can actually use this alignment to help me choose what's best for me. Again, I feel like I'm scratching the surface again, but yeah, we could talk about this all day. Okay. So again, this was broad strokes, excuse me. But I just wanted to say, as we're kind of starting to wrap up a little bit, just the last slide here, I want to comment that as I was preparing for this presentation, I felt a message coming in from my higher self. And the message was a reminder that this evolutionary process that we are experiencing entails a paradigm shift in every area of our lives and our world continuously. So basically, don't get too comfortable because we're going to be shifting and shifting and shifting. And this is something that I feel is the next step for us. I should say for me, I'm starting to learn more about this is the next thing. Lori Ladd is a spiritual teacher that I love her. She's got a very active YouTube channel, and a lot of times when she's teaching, it just feels like, oh yes, I get it, that's where I am. So this is what she's talking about these days. When she talks about releasing resistance to allow transmutation. So it's very quantum, but the idea is, instead of trying to figure out, okay, what do I need? What do I need? How do I, solve this thing? It's, what if we don't have to solve it? It's the next step. So what she says is, when I stop trying to fix something, I'm able to step into peace. When I stop trying to heal myself, I will find myself in a surrendered space where the pain has a place to be. And from that place, I'm able to step into the knowingness, or the consciousness, that everything is always changing. The next level of consciousness we're asked to step into is to no longer heal ourselves, no longer try to heal the world. Before you go out and try to fix the world or fix ourselves, the initial thing to start to pay attention to is to allow that which we want to fix, or that we dislike, to have a place at the dining room table. There's a different energy when we allow it to be with us. We accept and surrender it from a much deeper place. Along the way, you may discover a root trauma that you can dive into, and beyond that is unconditional love. And from that place, everything heals. Another way to look at it, what would your higher self say to you? Let it be. It's designed to fix itself. So with this last quote from Lori Ladd, I feel like this is definitely the quantum leap beyond what I've shared so far. What I've shared so far is, very basic, and it's already kind of a new earth concept, but I feel like this is definitely going to propel us forward. And I'm sure there'll be more discussion that comes up later when we have our discussion time. Okay, so here we go. These are some resources. How to get more information about the things that I've shared, and I believe that Janice has incorporated these onto the New Earth Envisioning Project website, so these will be available. And with that, it's going to be time for a guided meditation next. Okay, so we're going to do a guided meditation for about 5 minutes, and then we'll do a writing prompt next. So I feel like I should just pause for a minute and let us just get ready to shift gears, just maybe 30 seconds. Take a few breaths. Transition from listening to the presenter to listening to deep within, to ourselves. Okay. So when you're ready, I invite you to close your eyes. Become aware of your breath. Feel your chest moving, rising and falling with each breath. Feel the air in your nostrils. And I want to invite us during this guided meditation to take a walk in nature, in our imagination. Take a walk in nature, and we're going to have an encounter with our body. So I invite you to imagine that you have just placed your feet on this forested trail, a trail in the forest, and you hear all around you the buzzing sounds of nature. You hear the insects humming. You hear the leaves rustling with a slight breeze. You start to smell the pine and the other beautiful trees, the scent that they are emitting in this nature trail in the forest. And as you're on this trail, you look to your right and you notice that there's a presence. And this presence feels very familiar. It's actually feels like someone that you know, but you wish you knew better. It is as if a part of you has shown up next to you. And this presence is a representation of your own body, your physical body. And you become aware of it. Become aware that this presence next to you, which you can now see in a different light, it's sentient. It has intelligence. Not only that, it might have more intelligence than you ever imagined. And you feel a sense of familiarity, and you reach out your hand and you grasp the hand of this presence. And together you begin to walk down the trail. And as you walk down the trail, you feel this interconnection with this presence beside you that represents your very own body. You feel this interconnectedness. You feel this deep history that you've shared together. And as you walk, you express to your body something that you've always wanted to express to it. You may find that you ask your body's forgiveness for not noticing it more. Or you might find that you express how excited you are to have a deeper connection with it. Just allow for an open dialogue between you and your body. And just for a few moments, we'll walk this path with our body. Not only sharing, but also listening. Maybe as if for the first time, to the messages that it wants to give us so desperately, to deepen that connection. We want to thank our body for this encounter that we've had on this nature trail through the forest. You turn to your body and you fold your hands and you say namaste to your body, the heart full of gratitude. And when we are ready, we can open our eyes. We're going to go straight into our writing prompt. So our writing prompt for this evening is, after experiencing my body as an ally and a trusted friend, I feel. We'll spend the next 8 minutes or so on our writing prompt. Okay, we're just about ready to wrap up here. It's good. This was a juicy one. Everyone's so into it. And as our last folks are finishing, I'll just let everyone know that for our soul work for the week, we can just take what we experience from this writing prompt and find one way to incorporate perhaps a practice of showing our body love every day, whatever that looks like for you. Are we going to perhaps have a little discussion now and stop the recording?